Hello and welcome to Voices of Cricket with Anand Vasu. Today I'm sitting in the living room of a cricket writer who a lot of you know about. In this show, as you know, we don't talk to sportsmen, we don't talk to cricketers, we only talk to the people who bring the game to you, whether it's through broadcasting, through writing, or through any other form that may not yet have been invented. Bharat Sundaresan, thank you for being with me.
Always a pleasure, Anand. Vasu. I've never been in such a formal setting with you before, so let's give this a shot as well.
Well, there's supposed to be a first time for everything.
That's true, even this, who would have thought?
Okay, let's start by talking about the story that you've written that's easily my favorite. I think it's probably everyone's favorite as well. The Patrick Patterson story. It's not one that many people are familiar with, or more appropriately, I think not people aren't familiar with just how difficult it was to get hold of that story. So, can you tell us a little bit about that?
No, yeah, for sure. And to add to that, now in the Caribbean, apparently, I'm just known as the guy who found Patrick Patterson. I found out, so that's my calling card. So yeah, so the thing was like he'd always fascinated me as a cricketer, even though I never saw much of him growing up. Very briefly, but I remember my brother would force me to reenact or enact bowling actions, and every time it was Patrick Patterson's turn. And we obviously did not have I was just 6 years old, so we didn't have like a headband at home. So you would put like a belt around my forehead, and it would really hurt. Like the buckle would like poke into my forehead, but I would still, even with that pain, pull off the Patrick Patterson action, and the name and just the aura stuck with me. So when I went to the Caribbean for the first time in 2011, I thought I should look for him, which I did, and people just said he's not, he's gone. And there are so many cases, as you know from your trips there, that a lot of West Indian cricketers do get lost. I mean, former, especially guys who played in the 70s, 80s, those guys from the Rebel tours. So a lot of them, whoever I spoke to, said him gone man, him lost in the bush, and and him lost in the bush. And when you hear that in Jamaica, that means you're never going to find them. So my heart did sink a little, but I kept at it. And the next time I went there with my wife, and she was part of the tour. And I remember it was a tri-series. Jamaica and Trinidad were the venues. So when the Jamaica leg finished, I told her we should go on this joyride to the north of the country, which has all these pretty beaches. But unbeknownst to her, I was actually I laid out a plan to drive through the part of Jamaica where his parents come from, and I thought that way nobody knows. And something told me that because there's no record of him being lost in the bush, I thought maybe he's still out there to be found. So and where does one go when they disappear? To their parents' place. Or that's, I think, the Indian mindset in me. Maybe I haven't watched too much Bollywood, but maybe a little bit. So so we drove past all these little towns, and everywhere we stopped to get myself a red stripe. Of course, what does they do in Jamaica? Would buy a red stripe. I would ask them if they'd ever heard of Patrick Patterson, because we were in the district. And finally, we stopped. I think it must have been the fifth time. It was well spread out. I don't think I was drinking and driving, but so we stopped there, and this guy said, "Yeah, I know," and I was really excited. He said, "Yeah, his parents just live down the road. Come, I'll take you there." And so my wife and I went with this guy, and he took us there, and his parents were there. And then it turned out even his parents did not know where he was, and I was quite amazed at that point. And and I remember his mother saying, and they were old. Patrick Patterson is in his mid-50s, so they were pretty old. And his mother saying, "Oh, like any other mother," she said, "Oh, he might be lost, but he's a good boy, Patrick. He's a good boy." And then I felt bad, So I remember writing a story then about how even his parents don't know where Patrick Patterson is. And so obviously, once I wrote that, I was obviously the next time, if I ever come back to Jamaica, I have to just find him. And then just a lot of things just fell into place, really. I went there, I just happened to find a place up in the hills, and the owner, the guy who owned the place or ran the little motel-like place, he said he's this guy who knew nothing about cricket, but he helped me in getting some contacts. He used the RIA, the Rasta intelligence agency, and yeah, eventually I got there. I mean, even the whole part where I called him for the first time, I didn't know what I was going to expect. It took me at least 3 or 4 calls to convince him that he should meet me, and eventually I think it was the bit where I told him about how I'd met his parents or made the effort to meet his parents. He said, but he convinced him that maybe he should meet me, and yeah, there I was outside his doorstep. He never let me inside the house, even though I met him a few times during the trip. Apparently, he's injustice on the wall for whatever he's faced in his life, and it was quite it's something, and it was beyond a story for me. Really, I continue to be in touch with him. I'm still the only window to the world for him. Like, he messaged me last week. Apparently, he saw an IPL match somewhere on TV for the first time, and he was so excited. He'd never seen a T20 before. So yeah, I look at him more like a friend now, someone who I need to really kind of take care of. It's more than a story for me.
So I think it's one of your best stories, and I think it's actually one of the more difficult stories anyone out of India has had to do in the recent past. But is it your favorite story of the ones you've done?
No, I wouldn't actually think so. You would think that would be my favorite story. I think because for me, even while I was talking to Patrick Patterson, I knew because I committed to writing the story. I told my boss I was going to find him, and you know how it works in journalism. Once you tell the boss, he tells you what to do, and you do it. So I knew I was going to write this story. I knew it would be popular, but it was still not like my favorite story. I think.
So which was your favorite story?
Coming to that, it was. I think it was the one that I wrote on when Tendulkar retired. It was on a guy called Anil Gurav, who was a complete stranger, right? Like, unlike Patrick Patterson, who people knew of, he was just like a nobody who started playing cricket and lost his way, had a gangster brother, got into alcohol, drugs, and he's just a nobody, and he could have been the next Tendulkar. And I think it just, again, the West Indies played a role in it as well. They finished the test off in 3 days, so it got published on the day Tendulkar finished his career, so it just worked out well.
Well, we'll have the links to both those stories at the end of this video, and wherever else this is up on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and all of that. But moving on, let's try and get to know you a little bit better then. Leaving some of the cricket behind, maybe the cricket will shine through anyway. If you weren't a cricket writer, what would you have been?
I would have been a musician. I mean, I tried my hand at being a musician. I sang quite a bit. I was a vocalist in a heavy metal band called Warhead. Thankfully, for the world's sake, we aren't anywhere on YouTube, or thankfully, there's no record of us. But yeah, I used to sing, and then I played the drums quite well, I would like to believe, for a few years. And I really thought that was my future, because I never knew what journalism was, and it just happened to me. So yeah, there you go.
And what's been your favorite journey? You've traveled a lot, but with cricket, without cricket, what's been your favorite journey?
Oh, I think what I always would do is go on these road trips at the end of tours. And the most underrated one for me, and the one I really enjoyed, was one in Zimbabwe, because people generally go to Zimbabwe, and I'd heard, go to Victoria Falls, but I said, well, I can just see it on YouTube. So I just got hold of these two locals, and I asked them, take me to places that you've never been to. And we went to these amazing places, and it was just outwardly, really. And none of us knew each other, and some things I can't talk about on camera, but it was just amazing. Yeah, that would by far be my favorite road trip.
And moving from journeys to yourself, what is the one thing about yourself that you like the most?
Oh, I think the thing that I like about myself the most is I can walk into most rooms, and it's been with me thankfully from a very young age, and people just seem to get entertained, or at least assume that they will be entertained. And I like to believe work is good. You get some fame and some glamour with cricket writing. We're fortunate to be doing what we are, but it goes beyond. I want to be known for who I am than for what I write. So I think that is what I take a lot of pride in.
And if you could be one character in a book or a movie that you've read or watched in your life, rather than be Bharat Sundaresan, which one would it be?
Might sound a little childish, but I would love to be Sherlock Holmes, because I'm a big Sherlock Holmes mark, and I've read all his books, I've watched all his series. Not the modern Sherlock with all the gizmos, the old one, with the long nose and the cap and I would love to have been Sherlock Holmes. I think I would have been a good detective.
And who's the one person that you admire the most?
Oh, hands down my wife, and the pure reason is because like I said, like I can walk into a room and like know that people will like feel like they'll get entertained, but she just brings so much joy to whoever comes close to her, and like and just the ability to not have free time at all because she just keeps picking up habit or like no, I wouldn't even call them hobbies because they become their habits, whether it's sewing or stitching or pottery or yoga. It's just now, yeah. And once you say your wife's your hero, you don't have to go ahead at all. I mean, that's all you need to hear.
Well, wife might be your hero, but I'm sure there must be things about yourself that you think you could change. If there was one thing that you could change about yourself, what would it be?
Brief answers would be a good place to start with. So yeah, that would like yeah. I've had an issue with rambling on about a lot of things as you might have seen in this video, but no, yeah, brief. If I could keep things to like very see, there you go. Off I go again. Now, if brief answer, like if I could I had the ability to like just sum up things in like shorter sentences, it would have been great. I seem to do it when I write, but when it comes to talking, it just seems to go. I just seem to go on and on.
And finally, if you were to die and you had to come back and you could choose to come back as one person or one thing, even it could be a plant, could be an animal, could be a inanimate thing, could be just a cup of coffee. What would you come back as?
Yeah, I like life. I love life. I would want to be born again as a human being, and honestly, I would love to come back as a drummer with more talent than what I had, because all the stories that I've written, all that, but the high that you get from being on stage and performing. I only performed in colleges, but I don't think I've ever been able to replicate that anywhere else in life. It's just a different kind of high when you see people get into a mosh pit, and that's what I would like to come back as and have a wonderful rock star life.
Thank you very much for tuning into this edition of Voices of Cricket. Not so much cricket, but a lot of Bharat's voice. Hopefully you've learned a bit more about him through this episode.